Or has struck, so why don't we get started? I'll officially call the meeting to order of September 10th, 2014. We'll let the minutes reflect that all the board members are here, as well as a couple of members of staff, and a very robust audience joined us as well. So with that, we have our minutes of August 27th. Would entertain a motion of approval of those minutes.
I'll move.
Moved by Rob, seconded.
I'll second that.
Paula, any questions, comments, changes, or otherwise? Okay, seeing none, the minutes will stand approved as written. Thank you, Lisa, as always. And we'll move on to monthly reports. All of the monthly reports have been received. Today's the date that they need to be in. All of them have been received with the exception of engineer. It's going to be kind of hard to get that one from Prague. The local history room and historian, and public works and recreation. So I'm anticipating three of those four should be in tomorrow, and we'll make sure that they get forwarded off to the town board. No public hearings, no guests tonight. We'll move right on to action items, and we'll start right in with Mr. Costello.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Last meeting, we reviewed a proposed sign package for Panera Bread. And as I sent you a breakdown of the project, the two outstanding issues were, number one, they were identifying drive-through signs on the building. Drive-through signs on the building are not business identification signs or directory signage and are not permitted on the building. We informed them of that issue and the board's concern for it, and they revised the package to show no drive-through signs on the building. And then secondly, the major signs, the Panera, I guess they call it motor Panera signs, the big signs were too large for the sign package. Even when we reduced down the drive-through signs, they were still 39.16 square feet over signage, so they revised that down now to the 143.33 square feet that they are entitled to. All the other signage in there is directory signage. They're all permitted to be in place, and we'll work with them to make sure that that gets in place.
So everything as revised is now in
It's
compliance
now in
with the ordinance.
compliance. Good. Just wanted to bring it to your attention, make sure that you're comfortable with it, and if so, I will let them know that you're satisfied, and then they can move on with their sign.
Are they indicating drive-through on the directory sign?
No, they have it on their, as you drive in, they have directory signs that are like enter exit signs. They do show those
Oh,
directory
that's what I
signs
meant.
as part of it,
Okay.
yes. They will do
Got
that.
it.
That's what I didn't see, and I asked you in the email.
Yeah,
because
they
I was
are in
wondering
there.
about that.
If you go through, you'll find them. It's not easy, there's like a ton of them that you gotta go through, but
Oh,
they are there.
yeah.
Sounds good.
We're good?
Okay.
Satisfied?
So finally got to where we needed to and wanted to be. You can close that loop back, Jim, so that we have the record complete that we did review it at this meeting, and we did approve at the level of square footage that is permissible by code.
Very good.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
The next item is a pool encroachment at 21 D'Angelo Drive.
Yes, we have Mr. Lingle with us. Mike Lingle came in tonight. I've been working with Mike now for several days. This got to be way more interesting than it should have been. Mr. Lingle bought a piece of property on 21 D'Angelo Drive.
Please.
21 D'Angelo Drive, back in the 1990s, we approved several properties known as Alden Glen Section 2 and 2-2. He lives in 2-2, which is the cul-de-sac on D'Angelo Drive. He was brought to my attention because he applied for a permit to install a pool and some landscaping in his backyard. And when he did that, the building inspectors identified the fact that there was a conservation easement on the site plan, the subdivision plat, at the time that they approved the subdivision. I'm going to pass these around so you can all have a copy. I went back to find out why they did that, because Mike was good enough to send me several photographs of his property and his neighbor's property. I'll pass those around, and you can see the aerials. These aerials don't look much different in terms of how the backyards looked as they did before the property was developed. It wasn't like there was a a gigantic forest back there, anything of that nature. They look open space.
These are enormous backyards.
They are very big backyards. So I went back to the resolution of approval. There was a reference to the fact there was a conservation easement, but didn't talk about why the conservation easement was being put in place. You'll notice it's on several of the properties, and I'm not even sure the neighbors even know there's a conservation easement in place. There are swing sets and all sorts of things in the neighborhood, pools in areas.
A landing strip?
So that's an interesting question. When we bought the house, it was winter, so that was covered. I think the family that owned the house before us put it in as a cricket court.
Got it.
Ah.
Okay. All right.
Yes, I've been joking that we should buy and play it against sports equipment to try it
Yeah.
out. I haven't done it yet, but
I was wondering what that was when I saw that, a small landing strip or something.
Yeah.
But in any event, I went through to see if I could find a copy of the conservation easement in the Monroe County Clerk's office. It's not been recorded. There's nothing there. This encroachment will be minimal as it's close to the home and not out into the back area. The town of Penfield actually does own property adjacent to this area, but it's for drainage purposes, and that's the land here that we own.
Right.
I checked this map to see if maybe there was a federal wetland or something on the property. There was no wetlands, there's no drainage easement, so he does have a drainage ditch running through the property, it transverses the property. But there was no rationale that I could come up with. I even called Doug Fox to see if he could remember. He couldn't remember why it was there.
Usually we'll see kind of like a carved out, some sort of feature or something that
There is a beautiful tree line to the back of the yard. I could understand why you'd want to preserve that and maybe put an easement over that area. And maybe that's what the intent was, but the legal description on the map and what they did certainly doesn't show that to be the case.
So Jim, this is town of Penfield.
That's
This is
us.
our
That's right.
This is our property that we have,
That's
and
right.
we have
It's a
that
drainage
from a
area.
drainage
Right.
standpoint. Okay.
So you can see on the bottom part of the subdivision down by
Right.
the cul-de-sac, there is a triangular portion that is wooded. Certainly you'd want to keep that intact. But my thought was, I just can't find any rationale as to why we did that, and certainly there must be something, but I don't know what it is at this point in time. He's asking for relief to encroach into the easement area so that he can install his built-in pool and his landscaped area adjacent to it. Nobody on staff can understand why he shouldn't be able to do that. As a matter of fact, we're going to have to do some more investigation. I'm going to call the engineer and find out if he can remember why that was done. But there's nothing on that property that would indicate that, there's anything worth preserving in a conservation easement.
So I think for the benefit for the board, so we know that the property is number 21 here,
Right.
21 here. Can we have a
21.
rough sense of how that will, from an actual encroachment standpoint, what does that look
It's-
like?
It's very minimal. It just comes into this area here.
how much
It's
is
not
that?
back here.
Like feet wide.
20 feet maybe, if that.
at most,
It's on
I
an
don't have the
angle.
drawings to scale yet.
Got it.
It does go over the line some.
Yeah.
So our request would be to certainly go over, if there wouldn't be part of my logic would be, if we want to do something in the future, we would hate to have to bother the board again if we wanted to move further back. So I could see a reason to move the easement back to the tree line. We don't have any intention of doing anything with the tree line. I suppose so there could be various actions. One is just to allow us to encroach for the purpose of the pool. One that would probably make the most sense would be to move the line back to the tree line, if not dissolving it at all. So the way the plans go currently, it's just over the line. We don't have quite the final design yet, so I'd hate to represent a certain number without knowing the final plans.
Sure.
It could be a little bit more than we have in the current drawing, maybe even a little bit less, but nothing is usually less, right? It's probably a little bit more, but I think that as currently drawn, it's just over the line. And I do have a drawing of that.
Remind me, Kaz, what's behind this tree line?
That tree line
Backs up
buffers their property from our property. We have a town drainage area
But
back
there's
there, which is
nothing
quite large.
Beyond that, just a drainage
It
facility.
shows right here, this is their property. Here's the land that we
Yeah.
own.
Yeah.
It's that big area that's got the gutter running through the middle of it for drainage purposes.
Okay.
Well, if you're gonna put the pool up, wouldn't you have to put a fence up too? And the
We
fence
would.
would
Yep.
possibly go all the way to the trees there.
No, because we will put the fence closer to the pool in order to keep it enclosed closer to the pool.
So Jim, did you happen to go in and actually take a look at the minutes from the
I've
meeting?
looked at the minutes, I have looked at the public hearing, I've looked at the resolutions. I went back to the original Phase 1 to see if there was some reference point that was
Right.
causing it to occur in Phase 2. There's just no reference, and there's no document to support it.
It'd
So
just be a buffer or something to the,
I don't know why we would encumber their backyards the way we did.
I don't know.
He does have a drainage easement that transverses through the property. We're gonna have to maintain that because obviously drainage out there is very important.
Right.
We can't disrupt that in any way, but other than that, as I say, I'm gonna continue to work with the engineer that designed the project to see if he had any rationale as to why they did
Who
it.
was the engineering firm?
It was Bob Kiefer.
Oh, Bob Kiefer.
Yeah, so I'll be talking to Bob, he's in here a lot, so I'm gonna give him a call and find out what's going on. But I thought Doug may have remembered and he had no recollection of it.
Certainly, I support, obviously, maintaining that tree line, not only for conservation purposes, but for drainage purposes, too. I think that's part of the drainage plan, I'm sure, and there is to recognize that there's a significant amount of trees that soak up water. So, I would support certainly moving the line.
Well, I'm not sure that's
If
what you're
we
really
even-
requesting.
If it's even necessary.
Yeah, at this point, I'm not certain I'd want to do that unless we talk to everybody else who's been encumbered
Right,
by
because
this
we'd have to go
easement,
through the
which
whole
we could do.
procedure.
I mean, once I get 2 free minutes and the weather starts getting worse and we got time to play with that kind of thing, but we probably should contact all of them and find out. Because theoretically, if somebody encroached into that area and somebody didn't want them to, I mean, they could potentially
Are
sue the
the
neighbors
trees
to do
in
that.
part of are the trees in the drainage easement? Or
Some of
is
the trees are in the drainage easement. The drainage easement transfers to the
That
property.
seems to be
It
sufficient
kind
for
of
our
comes down through
purposes.
here, there's actually another one that comes off the other property
off this other
to
side.
the easement,
Cuts
where the
across.
trees are located. The trees kind of bump out, if you look at the overview, the trees bump out a little bit more into his backyard. That's what's happening here, the 2 easements come in together and there's just more trees in that area for some reason, so.
So I think, Jim, a couple of things that I think would be helpful. Is it your intent or interest to start this project this fall?
That was the idea. We
Okay.
have the landscaper lined up and Northeastern Pool Company
Got
lined
it.
up to do it before the end of the month. They won't dig after, I think, the
Right.
last week in September.
Right, sure, I understand.
We didn't mean to be last minute, sorry. We didn't
Yeah,
mean to be
no.
last minute about it. It just, all of these things started to fall into
Yeah,
place
no.
and,
You
right.
know.
Right, so.
It just kind of built on itself. We couldn't get
Yeah.
we couldn't figure out how to solve the problem until we got it back to you and I have no documentation to help
Yeah.
support your.
I'm satisfied in that we can't support the fact that there is a conservation easement. We don't have any record to support that, and it seems as if the town's needs with respect to drainage are being met by the easement and by the existence of the trees, which don't appear to be going anywhere, I can't imagine.
Right.
So it seems as if our purposes are satisfied, and now we want to make sure the residents' purposes are satisfied.
I think, Jim, what might be helpful, if we haven't done it, one, certainly is, check with Bob Kiefer, as you indicated, as the engineer. But the second thing is that to take a look at the deed that's on file in the assessor's office, to see if there's any reference, within the deed of this. And if there isn't, we're only seeing it on the map, then I would like to have it go to PRC, and I'd like to have PRC just to, take a look at that. But, if there is really what I would call no real purpose for that, formally, maybe the thing we do is we look to, in some action to release it.
Yeah, I agree.
And do it
PRC
that
has
way.
looked at it, and PRC is in the same quandary we are. They can't understand, none of them can remember why we did it, and I agree with you. I think we have to go back and, we'll talk to Kiefer.
And the only place it's showing up is on the engineer map.
It's
That's
showing
all
up
I'm
on the approved site plan, but there's no reference in the library page in the county clerk's office, it's just there. So we will do that, and I think what we'll do is we'll contact each of the property owners, there aren't that many, there's 7 of them. Let them know what the situation is and see if they're supportive of releasing it. Although, we're not releasing anything from the county clerk's office, we'll be releasing it as a reference point on the subdivision
Right.
plat that was recorded.
Well, I think we just need to have that, follow the paperwork so that
Right.
the next person that comes in,
Exactly.
10 years from now, when none of us are sitting around the table, that the next group is going through the same thing. So if we, well, Lisa will still be here. You know, when you're 29, then
Oh,
you've
Rob.
got another 30 years to go.
that's
before
it.
you- But let's do that. But I think as long as we're not violating, as Paula said, the drainage easement component of that, why don't we give the property owner a letter back from the town so that he's got it for his records and his files. And in the meantime, we'll take a look to see if we do a broader abandonment or release, depending upon how we look at it.
I haven't seen any encroachments into the easement. I mean, others have swimming pools in this neighborhood, but they haven't encroached into it that I'm aware of, or if they have, it's very minor, because everything's still pretty open in those back
Right,
areas back
right.
there. So we'll do that, and we'll talk to the neighbors and see if there's any interest. We'll just release the easement by reference off the map.
So he can get going before you have the neighbors
Yes.
consent.
If you're comfortable, yes.
Yeah, is make sure that, or that you're letting the neighbors know that their
Right.
time is a little bit of the essence.
Well, we're gonna call the neighbors just so they know what's happening, because as I say, you have some of these track restrictions, and if somebody decides that they don't wanna see that violated, they have the right to go in and take action against the neighbor who does it, so we've got to let them know that this is happening. But we'll take care of that in the office.
Okay,
Okay.
good,
All right.
good.
Certainly appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
All right.
Sorry for the can of worms.
Oh,
Thank you.
Glad we're getting it resolved. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you. That will next then take us to 5 Mile Line Road Café, signage and music.
Yes. Recently, Jen Aquino and her husband Sal were in to visit us in the previous meeting. I want to pass this around and give you some dimensions. Pass this around, see if you could. I just got off the phone actually with the sign person a few minutes ago, because I noted his dimensions were off. He's got a problem with his computer program, but he did verify the numbers for me. With respect to the sign, the applicants were requesting, and they have been before this board, and they're also, it's been discussed at the Historic Preservation Board, that they're not getting enough visibility on the existing signage that they have, because both, number one, they don't have a sign on the building, but secondly, the sign that they have out by the road is the exact same color as the dentist office sign, so they're missing some identification. They initially talked about the possibility of coming to you with a second freestanding sign. We looked at the idea of doing that, and that really was going to create some problems with respect to the code in terms of setbacks between existing signs. And secondly, it was going to cause problems for the people that already have signs out there, because if you're coming from the south, you'd be blocking off Dr. Wanamaker's sign. If you're coming from the north, you'd be blocking off Dr. Merkley's sign. So we decided that, in talking to the applicants, that it was appropriate to maybe do something with the existing sign, repaint it in such a way that it wasn't, it wasn't going to be gaudy or conflicting with the existing sign. Southpaw looked at the site and came up with some ideas. I think they're pretty nice. The other issue is because they don't have a sign on the building, they are entitled to a wall-mounted sign. That sign would be 1.5 feet by 16.6 inches, or 6 feet, coming out to 24.9 feet. That more than meets the requirements for that building based on its length. The length, I mean, you could have a much larger sign than that based on what's out there right now. So I think in talking to the Historic Preservation Board the other evening, they would, if the board supports this, they will support it, and we'll have a meeting in October to verify and memorialize the approval of the signage. And I think that we'd be in good shape with them on that side. They would be in compliance now with signage and still get the visibility that we're looking for.
Yeah, I like the logo, the coffee.
Yeah.
I think that's
It's
attractive.
nice.
Looks good to me.
The Historic Board did ask for, the listing of all the sign colors, because they wanted to make sure we stayed
Yeah.
more,
Less orangish.
exactly.
Consistent.
Trying to be as diplomatic as possible. But in
Yeah.
any event, we will get that, and also certainly the board, I'll get that for the record for this board too, if you need it.
Jim, so the freestanding sign at 15.8 square feet.
Right.
With the Merkley sign, that overall sign does in fact meet or is less than what the code requires?
No, the boards, both boards did grant approval. I think they were 25.2 feet, something like that. They're just a little bit over, it's a 20-foot requirement. I think they went to 25.2 feet. But this sign was approved, the sign size was approved by this board and also the Historic Preservation Board.
I assume condition on the fact
Few
that
years
it's
ago.
2 establishments in
Exactly.
the sign versus if one establishment were to come in, they would have to revisit
Exactly.
that sign.
And the other problem was, which was a nice feature, was the owner, Dr. Pignato, was trying to minimize the number of freestanding signs on the property. There are actually 3 properties in a row that he owns there. He actually got it down to 2 signs, even though he has 3 properties. So that was the rationale for getting it all together.
I'm fine with that.
Me too.
And then the sign attached to the building is within the square footage.
Well within, yes.
That is, I was just looking at this previous resolution that we did in May of 2013. And I don't see any,
They have something like,
I don't see any reference. I don't see
no, I
any,
think it's like 36 feet of frontage. So I mean, theoretically, they'd be entitled to 72 square feet of signage. Obviously,
Okay.
it doesn't fit on that building the way it should. They'd have to go in for relief to put it anywhere else. And I will note that initially, when they talked to you, they talked about the idea of putting the sign on the roof area. And of course, that's not compliant with our code. And the alternative was now to put it underneath the area as you walk in.
Is the banner one in the front?
It's not a banner, it will be a
No,
hard sign.
Yeah, yeah, but it's a banner. look to it.
Yes, banner design,
But
yes.
with the coffee cup, it looks like it's coming down so far that it's,
Will Tony be able to walk in
Yeah.
there?
I don't know. I don't know
It
the
did
answer.
so. It's-
I think what they're trying to do,
It's a
though, is they're
door.
trying to focus on the rear of the building to be the main entrance, because that's where the parking lot is.
Right.
So you actually have to walk through that area to get in. I suppose you could do this, particularly in the summertime, you could walk through there, but they're not focusing on that as being the main entrance, so. I would
They
suggest
don't
Mr.
wanna have
LaFountain
any-
walk through the rear of the building, it's much more safe.
I'm sorry, they don't have any signage in the back, right?
No, not that I'm
The
aware of.
entrance.
I was over there and I didn't see anything. They have something in the window, open, close, that kind of
Right.
thing.
so on item 10, it talks about any future modification of the sign shall be reviewed and approved by both boards. So
Yep.
you said that the Historic Preservation Board is good with what they saw.
They've informally reviewed it. They will have a quote, public hearing in October on it, just to make sure that everybody's, it's got to be memorialized to a resolution for them, so
Okay.
we'll do that.
Okay, so I think that takes care of half of the discussion. Everybody's good with the sign?
Yes.
Okay, so the other half of the conversation is music.
They had requested a permit from the board to allow them to play acoustic music on the outside. We talked about the inside as well, but the outside, I think, was what they were focusing on. And I would bring to the board's attention the fact that I don't think this board has granted approval for anybody to be able to play exterior music in the four corners. And I'm thinking of any other area of town in the last several years, and nothing's coming to mind. So I guess our recommendation to you would be, if they want to have music in the interior, as others do at times, that it be acoustic in nature, and that it, until such time as we determine if it's really going to aid them in drawing in additional customers. I'd hold, especially with the weather being it is now, you're not going to have anybody outside for the next 6 months anyway.
It's
So.
also tough with the traffic noise, that, an acoustic arrangement on the outside of that building, I just don't know how well it would carry.
Get louder and louder.
Yeah.
Trying to,
It's just they've got seating for about 20 in there, but it gets pretty confining when you're moving around with waitresses and somebody standing there singing and all that business. I would support their efforts to try and do something on the interior to see if that helps them. I personally think the signage is going to help them much more than that will on a day-to-day basis, but certainly I'd support their efforts to do something on the interior. I'd like to wait and see how that works out before they have to go back outside and see how that works. As I said, you haven't done that with anybody
Yeah.
in recent memory.
I would agree,
recent
and
memory for
they
me
can
is
certainly, if they
30
want to do
years.
some sort of special arrangement to have the music inside, reconfigure their tables, take it
Oh, yeah,
out loud or
absolutely,
something
yeah.
to try to pack it in.
Okay, so go to the signs, hold on the music for now.
And you're comfortable inside?
yes.
Okay, that brings us down to information items. Jim, I know you've submitted some materials to the board, some research that you have done. Any additional comments that you'd like to offer? Obviously, the board has started to at least to look at and to start to digest some of that material that you submitted. I'm not sure we're at a point of having a lot of conversation about that this evening, but I just want to make sure that if there's anything more you might want to add to that.
No, I agree, Tony. The reason it's not informational items was you did ask that I provide you some materials. It wasn't the easiest thing to do, but actually there were a few good ordinances that I did pull out. Actually, luckily for us, much of them are out west. Many of them are out west, but actually the best one that I found was the one in Deer Park, New York, which is in Orange County, which is a fairly affluent county. But they did do a fairly good ordinance for that use. And I think it's time that you just kind of take a look at it, see if, if it's something that you could be comfortable with or can't be comfortable with. When you've digested what I've sent you, and I know there was a lot of it there, you can put it on the next agenda and take a look at it and see if anybody's, has an effort to move forward with it, or if you're just not comfortable enough to move forward with it.
Jim, would you mind maybe over the next couple of weeks, maybe to reach out to that community and see if you might be able to obtain, either a link or a copy of a map so that this board could at least see, what that looks like, how that's
Good
laid out.
idea.
I actually looked already preliminarily at the Deer Park website. It is a KOA, which is what was
Yeah.
potentially proposed for here, so I thought there was some similar, and sure the topography is much different. We'll see
Yeah.
for what's it's near a river, and there's significant.
I was looking for things about how to ensure that it's temporary in nature and doesn't become a mobile home park, which is not what it would be zoned for. And I think they did a fairly good job with that. The one in Mesa, Arizona did a fairly good job with that as well. So I just want you to take some time, look at it, get comfortable with it, and then make a decision as to whether or not, the level's comfortable enough for you to move forward, or if we just want to end the issue.
I think, certainly we want to do our due diligence. We don't want to rush it, but on the other side of the coin, we don't want to drag this out either, in fairness to, to the applicant that brought it forward, so that we can at least give him a direction, whatever that direction is.
Right, and luckily for us, I mean, he understands that it's not going to be something that happens overnight. I mean, he's looking in advance to do this, so it's going to give you time to do what you need to do and think it out and do what's appropriate.
Okay, all right, sounds good. That wraps the agenda. Anything that we need to discuss that'll have a severe impact on the town if we don't before our next work session? All right. Seeing nothing then, the meeting of September 10th is officially adjourned at 7:28 p.m. Thank you.